It is wonderful to be here with you, spending this moment. Whenever you are experiencing this moment, I am grateful for this chance to connect. I remember, was it 4 years ago? When Trump was deemed the election winner, and being on Facebook Live and just crying and trying to project what the world ahead would be. And a lot of people were very soothing and commiserating with me, and there were people that were couldn't get their head around why I was so concerned and why I was so emotional. And it's similar, like, when this year, when Biden did win, when that was announced, or, theoretically, it looked like all things pointing to a win. And I said, I don't feel like dancing yet. I mean, it doesn't feel like we're done here. And I hate being this negative Ned. But there's been a lot of reason to have concern. And it's I don't want to be a negative person. I love the idea of pronoia. The world is conspiring, or the universe is conspiring in our favor. And I don't know how I keep getting caught up in this pessimism. Maybe it's because I'm watching the news too much. And when I say watch the news, I don't watch a news show. I will cruise through Twitter and read updates from people that I think, curate a valid perspective of things happening. And in that curation, I include people that I consider to be on the edges that I think have lost touch with reality. But I do like to understand where these perspectives are. And, I've done a few Facebook Lives over the last week, in response to the storming of the Capitol, and then also in response to some of the conversations that happened afterwards, and just trying to get my head around what does it mean right now, and what's a valid way to think, and what's a valid way to have optimism, or what's a valid place to put your energies, what's the responsible response. One thing that has been so interesting and also so difficult is seeing how things are interpreted so differently. And I guess I see this over and over, so I'm not sure why it surprises me. I through the filters that I see the world, and through the media that I ingest, and the perspectives that I trust, I will, for example, conclude that Donald Trump is not trustworthy. He is prone to lie. He is manipulative. He is selfish. He's put himself above country. And then I, try to see it. To me, it's like, how could this not be obvious? And I try to have does somebody who is disagreeing with me say, yes, that's true, but he's the only one who is fighting for the common person against this corrupt government system, or whatever? Is it an acknowledgement, like, yes, he's a womanizer, but because he is supporting certain policies, or because he's an antidote to things that I think are broken, I'm willing to accept those things about him? Or are people saying, that's all fake news? He is faithful to his wife. He's never been with a porn star. He has always been honest in his business dealings. He is a successful businessman. He never said that. And is it truly a alternate reality? And I think both cases exist. And so when I try to get my head around the state of the world, to me it's very clear, what is right and what is wrong. Maybe not very clear, but in certain situations lately it feels like I know it's obviously what's right and wrong. But what's crazy is that that's never the case. In every conflict in the history of the world, there are people on one side who think those people are crazy. Those people cannot accept reality. And the other side is going like, those people are crazy. I mean, to get whipped into a state where you are willing to commit violence against another human, you have to kind of fully adopt some concepts or ideas of just hate and just disdain and just repulsion towards another person, tribe. And unfortunately, we're wired in some ways to fall into those patterns and that tribalism. And as I'm trying to, like, as I sit with people who I agree with and we're commiserating about the clear wrongness, the insanity, the violence of storming the Capitol, I'm trying to imagine, like, what would my response be, or what would people that I consider to be rational patriots, what would their response be if, for example, it was discovered that Trump supporters were surrounding voting places and intimidating people from voting, and in doing so significantly affected the results, and we re-elected Trump because of this significant influence at the polls. What would be the response from my side? Would we feel that it is our duty to stand up and stop the steal? And what would that look like? And I see, footage of some of the violence in these crowds of people, of, violence against police officers, just this rage that people feel. And it's tempting to want to say, them, I'm above that, I would never do that. There's this weak, animalistic, I don't know what the derogatory term for someone who's not cultured, who does not resort to violence. But, I mean, clearly, like, if even the founding fathers, felt like, hey, we got to draw some lines in the sand, and we have to fight violently for what we believe in. And every war, at some level, that people make that decision. Sometimes from a super emotional place, sometimes from a very analytical place, sometimes from a incredibly manipulated place. And maybe you could argue all wars are fought because of manipulation. All wars are fought because the everyday people get manipulated into thinking that they have to fight for what's right. Meanwhile, the puppeteers of the 1%, convince us through manufactured consent of what we need to protect our ideals, and so we fight unknowingly for their best interests. Perhaps. But what I was thinking about this is, and as someone who does not identify as a violent person, I don't see myself as one capable of that. I would consider myself to be a conscientious objector if I was drafted, that I don't believe in violence and killing. I'm certainly against the death penalty. But I just today I had this memory of when I was in high school, 2 different times when I expressed violence because of a crowd vibe, a crowd fever. One was, it was school pride stuff. One was, I jumped over a fence from the crowd, ran over, and I don't know if I punched or if I knocked over the mascot of the other team. I mean, that's some insane MAGA kind of behavior right there, right? And then another time, that one was clearly like, I was a bully. I was a bad person. I was wrong. The other time is easier or harder to be clear about what was happening and what was right, what was wrong, and what I should feel shame for or pride for. There was a one of the schools that we played, our rival, they only had bleachers on one side. So the home team and the visiting team both sat on the same set of bleachers, just divided down the middle. Like south bleachers are home team, north bleachers are the away team. So there's a lot of tension down the middle, especially as games get tense and as things happen on the field and as the rivalry is kicking in. And there was one game where a fan from the other side had a huge flag of their mascot. We were playing the La Jolla Vikings, I believe, and we were the UC High Centurions. Go Cents. And the guy with the flag was running back and forth in front of all the stands. And it just felt like such taunting, as he's like running back and forth in front of our stands with his flag. And so after he did it a few times, a smaller friend, Adam, he was very small, like under 100 pounds little guy, kind of jumped into the pathway and very theatrically, with a lot of like, look at me what I'm doing. He got into a ball, and the guy running with the flag hit him and went tumbling, dropped his flag and went tumbling. And the guy who dropped the flag jumped up and ran at the little guy. And from the stands, I'm a couple rows up, I see this happening, and I leaped from my seat with probably 5 other people, all 5 other guys, all leaped out of our seats and began to pummel this guy. And there's a picture that somebody in the yearbook took, blurry, but you can see a cheerleader in the background like this, and me with my glasses like down on my nose and my fist up like this. Now, it was a pack of people. It was not a beating. He took a few licks. But I think about that as an example of like, that was not within what I would consider my personality. I was so caught up in the tribal pride and the violence of this battle and the seemingly oppressed wrongdoing against my weaker people, that I felt like, even though it makes no sense, I'm not a fighter, that I came to his aid with a violent response. So I don't know what that says or what that means, only that there's some deep human shit that we're contending with, and there's some deep human shit that we are being manipulated by. And it's so hard to find compassion. But maybe just the awareness that we all have this capabilities, if we fall into the wrong narratives or the wrong leadership or the wrong circle around us. I saw people that were at the protest at the Capitol. Their experience was one of incredible peace and camaraderie, and they're like, what are you talking about? They're like, it's fake news, there's no violence happening here. That was their experience with what was their surroundings. And imagine if you were on the very front lines and people started just like getting crazy and knocking things down and breaking things, like, you would get caught up in that energy. Maybe not you, but I know that I might. If a lot of situations were different, if the politics were different, if the wrong that trying to be righted was different, or at least I interpreted it so, could I be caught up in that? I don't think I could. I was gonna say, I don't think I could like hit someone with a a fire extinguisher, but if you would ask me, could I punch somebody in a mascot suit, I would have said no. Who knows what we're capable of? I think that it's a scary thought. And it's one that I am thinking about a lot now as I'm trying to find some sense of optimism about the future. So I will say I am scared by what's happening. I have sympathy for those that got caught up in things. And I also feel like there must be consequences so that we eliminate some of these actions as possibilities, or at least people understand, hey, if you're going to go that far, you are committing to a crime with significant consequences. Like me punching the guy in the suit. Like I probably, in my privileged high school mindset, didn't occur to me that I could go to jail for assault. If I knew that, if that was really part of my perspective, maybe I would not have gone that route. And I think that we need to make sure that we don't treat terrorism as high school kids who got out of hand. At the same time, culturally recognize that maybe we're all high school students that without responsible leadership, we can always be manipulated to get out of hand. Well, I am sorry for my actions as youth. I feel like I learned from them and I have done better since, but I also don't want to pretend that it's not a part of me. Thank you. I love you.